Hello everybody and welcome back to Expert Examiner IELTS. My name is Glyn and in this video we're going to give some feedback on Nura's speaking test. So let's have a look. Good afternoon, my name is Glyn. Would you please tell me your full name?
My full name is Piri, but you can call me Nura.
Okay, thank you, Nura. Now, in this first part of the test, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself. Do you work or do you study?
I currently started high school in 10th grade, just located in Central City.
Kind of a strange answer, right? I currently study in the 10th grade, fine, which is located in. I don't know. Can a study really be located in? So it sounds like a bit of memorized language that she's trying to use, but it sounds strange. I currently study in the 10th grade, which is located in center of the city or something. And what would you like to do when you finish studying? So when the candidate says that they're studying in high school, I don't ask the normal questions. Like I skip the questions like, why did you decide to study this? Usually the IELTS test is aimed at, people a little bit older than Nura, people who are like 18 or older, usually. There aren't really part one questions designed for school students, but there are questions like, what would you like to do when you finish studying? So that's why I jumped to that.
I would like to be marketolog.
A little bit of hesitation. I would like to be a marketolog. A marketolog sounds like a beautiful Russian word, marketolog. But in English, we don't have this word marketolog. Do we have marketologist? Sure, but it's not really the most common word. A marketing specialist, or I'd like to work in marketing. That language is more natural.
Because I'm really interested in this field.
And really interesting. So again, these participle adjectives, id versus ing. I'm interested in this field, or this field is interesting. We usually study this at intermediate, and I would expect candidates of B2 and higher to have more control over it. But it's only one mistake. Okay. All right, so let's move on and talk about. I just noticed that there's like an awkward silence, and then I step in and say, and this happens because I'm trying to give the candidate enough kind of space, because I know sometimes candidates pause and they hesitate. But as an examiner here, I have the decision to make. Well, has the candidate finished her turn? And we want signposts from the candidates to let us know when the turn is finished. And you will see throughout this part one that there are these awkward moments where I'm not sure if the candidate has finished her turn or not. At your home now. Do you live in a flat or a house?
I currently live at flat, which is
So I notice I'm trying to start. I currently live in a flat, and then it seems like she's stopped talking. And because of that pause, I kind of want to ask the next question, like, can you tell me about this flat? But then the candidate adds a which, and this shows, that the candidate is using slow speech, because when a person speaks at a regular, normal pace, we don't have that thing, right? I currently live in a flat, which is not I currently live in a flat, which is, so we have to be careful with those pauses in part one. Remember, the examiner has a number of questions that they have to get through, and they have their own strict time limits, and they must ask their questions inside those time limits. So if an examiner thinks that you finished your turn, the examiner will go to the next question.
located next to theme park.
Okay, which is located next to a theme park. Okay, a little bit of development, fine. And and again, theme park, and there's that pause. So if you're a slow speaker, you really have to be careful with this, because it can, it can be really disruptive, and it can affect your confidence if you feel like the examiner is speaking over you or interrupting you. This can really negatively affect your confidence. Can you describe the flat for me?
Yes, of course. So I live eighth eighth floor.
So the candidate has just shows that she doesn't have that lexical resource, right? She wants to say, I live on the eighth floor. Now, if you don't know eighth floor, you can find some word which is not specific, like I live on the eighth level, which it's not the right word, but it can help the examiner to understand. The candidate just guesses, I live in the eighth flat. She's just forgotten the word, perhaps, or she just doesn't have that word in her lexical resource.
So, and also I have
And strange cohesion. I live on the eighth flat, so, and then she gives up and says, and I also have,
really good neighbors who just live in this flat too.
which is live in this flat. Your neighbors don't live in the same flat as you. Your housemates or your roommates live in the same flat, but your neighbors live in the flat next to you, or the flat above you, or the flat below you. Now, I understand because Nura is from Russia. She's using the Russian word sosed as the word neighbor. Now, in Russian, the word sosed could be somebody who lives in the same flat as you, but it can also be someone who lives next to you, and so on. So, candidate has an L1 transference error. She's using the Russian word sosed as if it is exactly the same as the English word neighbor, and it isn't.
And around the flat,
And again, notice there's that pause, and I try to step in, and the candidate continues speaking.
a lot of flowers.
Candidate is just reaching, there's not a logical flow. Around the flat, a lot of flowers, which, it's an attempt to develop, but it's not a really flowing development, not like, oh, and near my flat there's a lot of flowers. So it's really nice, when you wake up in the morning, especially in spring or summer, and you leave your home, because usually you're quite tired in the morning, but when you step out of this like block of flats and you can smell these wonderful fresh flowers, it's just so nice. That would be a relevant development. Candidate just a lot of flowers. And notice the intonation is a little bit flowers. It's almost like a question intonation, showing that the candidate is not sure about the language that she's using. And what's your favorite room in your home?
My favorite room is my room because I can spend my time on my own, doing my own things like
Cool. I can spend my time on my own. Very nice.
listening music, reading
Listening to music. Again, in Russian, слушать музыку, but in English, listen to music. We have that preposition, listen to music, reading books,
books, and so on.
and so on. Fine. And is there anything you'd like to change about your home?
Um, no, I don't change nothing in my room.
So notice the difference in the question. Is there anything you would like to change? You would like, meaning like that you want to change. Candidate answers with I don't change, which is present simple, which just means, usually she doesn't change things. So the answer doesn't cohere with the question. No, I don't want to change anything, or no, there's nothing that I would like to change, or no, my flat is absolutely fine as it is, so I don't see any reason to change anything. Those are coherent answers. The candidate's answer of I don't change anything, it doesn't answer the question, is there anything you would like to change?
Because I like everything.
And how often do you speak to your neighbors?
Um, I I can say
Also notice the candidate's facial reaction here. Again, you don't get points for body language, but we do have this, like, the ability of the candidate to speak at length. And some people can speak at length with ease, and some people speak at length with difficulty, or it's noticeably uncomfortable. For me, it is noticeable that the candidate is experiencing discomfort. She has to develop her answer, and so her body language shows that she's uncomfortable doing this.
that I speak a lot with them because I see them rarely.
I see them rarely. Little bit strange. I don't see them very often, or I rarely see them, or I hardly ever see them, but I see them rarely in terms of word order. It's not perfectly natural. And notice again, there's that gap. Candidate is thinking, noticeably thinking about something, and so I give the candidate time, and then she just stops her answer. So for me, this is a sign of a lack of fluency. The candidate doesn't have full control over the length of her answers. She just starts speaking, and there's noticeable pausing for thought, and sometimes she can't think of anything else, and so she just stops the turn there. Okay, let's move on now and talk about sport and exercising. How often do you do physical exercise?
every morning because
Every morning. Fine. Nice direct answer. Develop.
I think people should do exercises every
Okay, I do exercise every morning because I think people should do exercise every morning. Fine. Why? Why? So it's good for your health. It's good for your physical health. It helps you to warm up in the morning. It also helps you to wake up. There's lots of things that you can add here.
morning. It's really helpful to your health, and
Okay, it's helpful to your health. Not helpful to, but helpful for your health.
you can get more energy before you start your
Okay, so the candidate is developing answers here. So I mentioned, like, oh, she's not developing enough, but now she is giving some development to this answer.
routine.
And do you play any sports?
Mm, unfortunately, no, because I'm
Again, candidate answers the question directly and starts to develop. Nice.
not an active person. I prefer to stay at home
Cool. I prefer to stay at home, hitting the infinitive. Good stuff.
and just doing indoor
And then switches to Jen. Just doing indoor or just staying indoor? I'm not sure what she said.
home and just doing indoor activities.
Just doing indoor. So I prefer to stay at home, just doing indoor activities. I guess you could have participle. Okay, fine. And did you play any sports when you were a child? Now, interestingly, before the test, I spoke to the candidate about her use of English, and she said she has this problem where sometimes she's asked about the past and she gives an answer in present simple. But now I asked her this question, did you play any sports when you were a child? And her answer is
Mm, yes, I play tennis with my friends
yes, I play tennis with my friends. So it's on the one hand, it's great that the candidate is aware of her own mistakes, right? She knows that, ooh, I have this problem. When the examiner asks me about the past, I start speaking using present simple. It's great that the candidate knows this, but on the other hand, it must be frustrating for the candidate to know what the mistake is, to know the grammar, but to repeat this mistake. So the candidate did mention that she has a tutor, and this is definitely something you can work on with your tutor. One thing I used to do with my students when we had when we were going through whole general English courses, we used to warm up with just repeating basic, simple, personal questions with all of the tenses and structures that we had studied so far. So starting with like present simple, what do you usually do at the weekend? Present continuous, what are you doing right now? Past simple, what did you do yesterday? Recently, like when we learned then present perfect, what have you done recently? With future plans, what are you going to do soon? With future predictions, like where do you think you will be in 20 years? So every time we had like a new core piece of grammar, we added it to that list of warm up questions that we had with the students at the beginning so that they could be trained repeatedly with these structures. Now, unfortunately, most of the students continued to make mistakes, especially with third person present simple s. There's only so much a teacher can do. A teacher can give you the opportunity to practice this over and over again, but ultimately it is the student's job or the candidate's job to get this right. And so it must be frustrating for the candidate when she knows that she should use played tennis, but she uses play tennis.
when I was a child. because it's
Okay, we get when I was child, fine.
easy sport for me.
Do you like watching sports on TV?
Not really, but one time I
Well, I like the fact that she's trying to develop, not really, but one time
watched with my
I watched with my grandfather. Again, one time is talking about the past. I watched, and not I watched with my grandfather football, but I watched football with my grandfather.
grandpa.
So let's just go back there.
I watched with my grandpa football on TV.
And just notice the intonation here. Or the sentence stress. I watched with my grandpa football on TV. Da, 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 da. So that's not natural. It's not natural intonation. It's not natural sentence stress. It is the sentence stress and the intonation of someone who is very doubtful about the language that she's using. So those doubts about the language negatively affect both the fluency and the pronunciation here.
And I can say that I like it.
Again, it's not very deep, is it? I can say that I like it. Anyone, most students of like elementary, pre-intermediate can say, I like something, I don't like something, it's interesting, it's not interesting. When you get to B1, B2, and C1, you go deeper. You don't say that it's interesting, you explain why it's interesting. Why did you like that film? Because it was interesting. When you get to higher levels, you don't say that. Why did you like that film? Oh, I really liked the characters. Like they were kind of like morally ambiguous. You didn't know if they were like the good guy or the bad guy. And I kind of like characters like that because it's kind of reflective of real life. That's explaining what was interesting, not saying it was interesting. And explaining, instead of saying I like it, explaining why you liked it is much, much more meaningful. And are there any sports or any other exercise activities that you would like to try in the future?
Mm, so it's an interesting question.
It's not a very interesting question, I don't think, but okay.
Let me think.
She's buying time, let me think. I like that.
I would like to try
I would like to try, very nice.
basketball because I often watch basketball teams on social medias and I really inspired of them.
I really inspired of them, so I am really inspired by them. So nice that she found the word inspired, but she didn't use it with the correct grammar
So that's
and with the correct collocation. I am grammar, inspired by vocab.
why I would like to try it.
And do you think it will be easy or difficult to learn to play basketball?
I think would be difficult because I'm short. So
That's a logical answer. I think it would be difficult because I'm short. I like that she's using would. My question was with will, but she switched to would, showing it's more hypothetical.
that's why I think like that.
Okay, so she adds things like that's why I think like that, but that's not real development. What did you think? I thought it was interesting, and that's why I liked it. So that's what I think about this film. It's still not real development. It's using words. It's trying to extend answers, but it's not really developing naturally. And a few times she's said something like that, where it's like she gives an answer and then she kind of repeats the idea a little bit and says, "Oh well, that's why I like it. I like it because it's good, and that's why I like it." It's like not enough. Thank you. Now, in this next, so thought comments on part one. The candidate is a very hesitant speaker, so this interrupts her fluency and her pronunciation. Her pronunciation also seems quite unenthusiastic. It feels like there's not a lot of energy. This often happens for a variety of reasons. If the candidate is bored, if the candidate is shy, if the candidate feels nervous, there are a number of reasons why this can happen, but sometimes people speak a little bit like this, and it, not only does that mark you, not only then does the examiner mark you down for pronunciation and possibly for fluency, but also just on a human level, it leaves a bad impression on the examiner. Keep in mind, sometimes, even though there is a limit on how many tests an examiner can do in one day, but those limits aren't always followed, shall we say. And sometimes it can be really stressful, or it can be really tiring when you have like 10 candidates in a day. And if they all speak like, well, I don't really know because it is. And, if you are that 10th candidate of the day, it's easy to see how an examiner might be influenced to give you a lower mark based on that. In terms of grammar, basic mistakes, not a wide range of structures, but at least she's controlling present time. You can kind of see that the candidate is thinking about her language use. She is quite mindful. I think, sometimes you can see her going to her brain to access some of this language. Um, Vocab seems, sufficient enough to deal with the questions in a direct way, but vocab doesn't seem sufficient enough to go into detail and to extend. So, she can say things like, yeah, I would like to try basketball. She can say things like, unfortunately, no. And she can say things like, I do morning exercises because I think everyone should do them. And there were a couple of questions where she extended well, but in general, for me, there isn't enough lexical resource to really go to that deeper level. So I kind of know the candidate is B1 right from this part one. It's never happened to me where a candidate was so obviously B1 and then throughout the rest of the test showed that she was something or he was something more than that. And so already I can see the candidate is getting between a 4 and a 5, uh probably 4.5, I would guess. Maybe 5. Yeah, but the candidate is B1, and we could end the test there, but let's see what else she does. Let's have a look at part two. So the task is for her to describe a place where she often goes shopping. Um, so lots of opportunities to activate vocab connected to shopping, but again, it's clear the candidate is a B1 and just probably doesn't have that lexical resource, doesn't have that vocab to go into great details. But let's see. I'd like you to describe a place where that's the end of your preparation time. To remind you, you will have between 1 and 2 minutes to give your talk, and I will let you know when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
I'm going to tell you about where I often go shopping. I often go shopping
It's a bit mechanical, isn't it? I'll tell you where I often go shopping. I often go shopping.
Victoria. It is located next to my school.
Didn't quite
It
get that.
is located next to my go shopping Victoria. It is
I go shopping Victoria. That's what I heard. I go shopping Victoria. I don't know what that means.
located next to my school. I usually buy a number of clothes.
Okay, so there's a couple of problems there. I usually buy there. I usually buy there a number of clothes. Again, this is Russian word order, right? So I usually buy a number of clothes there. That's where we should put there. I usually buy da 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 there, not I usually buy there something. It's just Russian word order. Candidate is kind of speaking Russian, but with English words. Also, a number of clothes. So, clothes is a bit of a strange noun. It is a plural noun. Clothes are nice and it's uncountable. So, not a number of with countable nouns, like amount of is used with uncountable.
Like t-shirt, skirt, and so on for my school.
Okay, a little bit of activate like t shirts and skirts, but that's quite basic vocab.
And also I buy some some books for it.
Some books for reading, maybe? Candidate has already broken down now, right? So the candidate has already got to the stage where it seems like she's thinking like, I don't know what else to say. But she's only been speaking for, I don't know, 10 minutes, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, something like this. So, you shouldn't be breaking down this early.
And and I also prefer to eat something there because there is a lot of restaurants in this magazine.
Also, magazine is like in French, right? It's the Russian word for shop. And in English, of course, magazine is something you read. It's not a place where you buy things from. Again, this is a transference error with vocabulary. Transference error just means that you make a mistake because you're thinking in your first language.
For example, Chinese restaurant and Korean. And also I can buy the cosmetics for myself.
So she actually finds that I can buy the cosmetics for myself. So intonation is a bit strange. I can buy cosmetics there. Da, 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 da. I can buy cosmetics there. Da, 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 da. I can buy cosmetics there. She has a. I can buy the cosmetics. So it's a bit off.
So
I am sorry for the audio, by the way. I'm noticing that every time I'm pausing this video and starting it, there's a strange sound. So I'm very sorry about that, but I'm too deep into the video now and can't go back.
and the reason why I often visit this.
Cool. The reason why I often visit. The reason why I. This is a cleft sentence. This is a great bit of language. The reason why I. Very nice.
Shopping because
Not the reason why I often shopping. The reason why I often go shopping. But let's see. Maybe she did say that. Let's check.
and the reason why I often visit this shopping
Okay, you can't visit a shopping. You can visit a shop, you can visit a shopping center, but you can't visit a shopping.
because shop connected, shop located.
This is the fourth or the fifth time in the test we've had this located. I know Russians love this word nachodится, 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 and they're always looking for that translation. Is located, is located, is located. Very often in the verb in English, we just use the verb to be, right? My bed is next to my closet. My computer desk is next to the window. We don't always have to use is located, is situated. Just is fine.
Are really convenient for me, and I don't waste my time.
I don't face my time. Again, Russian transference error, я могу не. I don't. So we don't say I can, don't. Don't is used in present simple. Don't is not used after a modal verb. I can, don't. Nah, it's indicative. It's the kind of mistake that we would expect, pre-intermediates, maybe some intermediates to make.
And just to go there. That's all I want to tell you.
Okay. So you can actually see the fear in the poor candidate's eye. Like, that's all I want to tell you. You can hear that she's struggling. You can hear the discomfort. And I always have to make this point. Any criticism that I might make of Nura's language, and again, it's not criticism, like I'm not speaking negatively about Nura's language. I'm just explaining what an examiner sees there. I think, Nura is fairly young, and I think the progress that she's made as an English user is great, and, she should continue learning. She's still only in year 10, I think, in school, so she has plenty of time to raise her level in English. She's doing absolutely fine. For her age, she's developing absolutely fine. For the moment, she's just not at that level where, she shouldn't think about IELTS yet, let's say. Thank you. She also mentioned that, 6.5 or 7 is the score that she's hoping to get in IELTS. So yeah, for the moment, Yeah, just forget about IELTS. Learn to enjoy English. Try to find some. Oh, I'll speak about some tips for improvement later, but for the moment, it feels like English is like almost like a pain for you. Like it's painful for you to speak English. Maybe because you're worried about mistakes, or maybe because you associate English with school, or you associate English with something you don't want to do, but something you have to do. Languages can be a great way of making friends and a great way of consuming new media. So I think learning to find a way to enjoy English will help you a lot. But more on that later. So no big surprises. Candidate is speaking at B1 level, B1 vocab, B1 grammar. Fluency is a little weaker than B1. I'd say the fluency is at closer to A2 level. Pronunciation is at maybe B1, maybe B2 level pronunciation. Like the clarity of her speech is absolutely fine. It's just the chunking and the word stress and the sentence stress. Yeah, those things are missing. So candidates' pronunciation is probably between B1 and B2. So you've been talking about a place where you often go shopping. Let's talk about shopping centers now. So apart from shops, what kind of things can we find in a big shopping center?
What kind of things we can find in the centers?
Yeah, so kind of struggling to understand the question. But in shopping centers, we have shops, but we also have other things. The candidates already mentioned that there are restaurants there, right? But also in big shopping centers, you might find something like some entertainment places. You might find cinemas. You might find like places where you can go bowling or play pool or play video games or something like this. Mhm. Except for shops.
Mhm. Can you explain again?
You're welcome to do this in part three. You can ask. It's supposed to be a discussion, and normally in a discussion, if you don't understand something, you can ask who you're talking to. Can you explain again? That's fine. So, in big shopping centers, what can we see there, but not shops? You mentioned in your shopping. So, I'm really now trying to grade my language, really trying to pull my language down. And I even go to the personal thing, like you mentioned in your shopping center. So, I'm hoping if I can change the question and make it personal, get the candidate to start speaking, and then we can get to the more general impersonal questions. But candidate is struggling here. Center, there are restaurants, for example. Are there any other kind of things in this shopping center?
Yes, of course. Uh, in shops, you can also find zoo magazines.
So zoo magazine. So zoo magazine in Russian is a pet shop. A pet shop is a type of shop where you can buy animals, or you can buy food for animals, or you can buy, toys for animals. We call it a pet shop. Russians call it a zoo magazine, and so the candidate is using zoo magazine.
Uh, uh, sale at a number of animals, for example, uh, dogs, cats, and rabbits. And you can also buy wood for them.
You can also buy wood for them. Hmm. And is it popular for young people in your country to spend time in shopping centers?
Absolutely,
Well, I like the way that she attacks questions quite directly and then tries to develop.
because when I visit shop centers, I can see a lot of
Notice the I here. When I visit shopping centers, I can see a lot of. Now, sometimes that's okay, but usually in part three, your answer should be in general. You shouldn't speak about I, you should speak about they. And very often with the lower level candidates, they find it very difficult to speak about they. And so they always find a way to bring the question back to I, because when we speak about I, we can our vocab is stronger when we speak about I. When we speak about they, it's much more difficult.
teenagers uh, who relax with their friends, with their families, buy something for themselves.
I let buy something for themselves. You get that reflexive pronoun, themselves. And are things in shopping centres usually overpriced?
Mm, I think yes.
I think yes is a bit. I think so is natural. I think yes. Я думаю, да. I think yes. I think so.
Because for example, I often buy cosmetics and
Notice again how the candidate is bringing it back to herself. Are things overpriced? Yes, because I often buy cosmetics. She doesn't think about, why things are overpriced or um, who might be able to afford those type of things. A lot of personal stuff here.
there is a lot of things that overpriced for me.
Things that are overpriced. Overpriced is an adjective. Let's move on now and talk about online shopping. Is online shopping popular in your country?
Yes, really popular in my country. We have different online shops, for example, Ozon and Wildberries, where people often buy a lot of things for themselves.
In a lot of things, imprecise.
For example,
For example, good.
my mother use often this on
My mother uses, and not my mother use often ozone. My mother often uses ozone. So again, word order is Russian word order. My mother use often ozone. Моя мама использует часто ozone.
online shops, my friends, my relatives. I can
My relevant? My relatives. Relatives. Родственники. My relatives.
say
Sorry for using so much Russian. I'll stop.
and online shops is really popular in my country.
Online shops is or online shops are? And what are the downsides or disadvantages of buying things online?
Mm, but the main mm, disadvantages is
Disadvantages is or disadvantages are? The main disadvantage is, the main disadvantages are.
that you can't wear things that you buy.
Can't wear? You can wear the things that you buy, but you can't try on the things that you buy. So again, candidate doesn't have that lexical resource. The candidate knows the verb wear. Maybe the candidate knows the verb put on, but the candidate doesn't know the phrasal verb to try something on. Now, to try something on means to put something on to see if it fits you, if it suits you, before you make that decision about buying. But the candidate doesn't know that verb try something on, or at least doesn't use it correctly and just uses you can't wear the things that you buy. But that's not true. You can wear the things that you buy.
And maybe delivery can uh, give you incorrect food.
Okay, so I think I'm going to hold the test there. I think there were one or two other questions, but I don't think it's useful really to look at those last two questions. Nothing much is going to change here. There's not going to be any feedback that I give about the candidate's language that's going to help her beyond this point. And I think we can get straight into the marks. So it's pretty easy to award marks for this. Fluency and coherence for me is for the candidate. The candidate really struggles to speak at length and has to rely on pauses and slow speech to such an extent that it puts a serious strain on the listener. So again, this is nothing against Nura. Nura is a lovely person, a very kind, honest, smiley, happy, nice person. but listening to her is objectively not painful, but listening to her is objectively difficult because of how slow the speech is, how broken up the speech is. It is like not frustrating in the like the way, but frustrating from a normal person's point of view. It would be frustrating to maintain a conversation with someone who speaks with this level of fluency. Lexical resource, probably 5. The candidate has enough words to answer questions in a fairly direct way, but lacks the ability to give extra details, which, for me sounds more like a 5. Cool. Grammatical range and accuracy, again, I'm going to give 5. So, at the very basic thing is the candidate uses sentences, or yeah, the candidate uses sentences. Control over some very basic grammar is okay, but there are very common and noticeable errors with even basic grammar. Do they impede understanding? Sometimes they could, but, like, is there anything you would like to change? No, I don't change anything. It's like, well, that does affect the way that I understand your answer, the grammar there. Pronunciation, again, I'll give 5 for pronunciation. So in general, your speech is clear and you have quite a good phonological range. No, the sounds that we have in English, the phonemes, the but, the cut, the dut, the th, all of that stuff, pretty good. However, there is a lack of energy or enthusiasm in your speech. It sounds flat, and this negatively affects both intonation and it leads to some kind of strange intonation where you rise a lot because you're not sure. So this negatively affects both intonation and something called sentence stress. You might not know what sentence stress is, but I went to the shop because I wanted to buy some bread. I went to the shop because I wanted to buy some bread. So in the sentence we stress keywords, but because you're speaking so slowly, each word is kind of pronounced with an equal amount of stress, so you don't get that sentence stress in your speech. But okay, overall 4.5. Candidate is intermediate. I think that's fair. Areas of improvement, you can do some like repetitive training with different verb tenses or verb forms. Because I know if you do a grammar test, you probably do all right. You probably know, present simple, present continuous, present perfect. You probably know a lot of those tenses. You just have a problem activating them in your speech. And so you could do some training with your tutor to do some of that repetitive training to get those verb tenses right, to be more mindful. Instead of just asking and answering the question, you could do analysis of questions in IELTS, like, what did you do when you were younger? Okay, is this about present time, past time, future time? Or how do you think something might change in the future? Is this about present time, past time, future time? So doing some question analysis could help you. It sounds as if you really don't enjoy using English. And I think it's important. I think it's important for you to find a real world use for English. So if if your English is the only thing that you use, like if you're only using English at school or with your tutor, you're going to hate English. Just like I hated French when I was in school. Um, if you can find a way to connect English to something that you love, like a movie, a TV series, or making online friends, or playing video games, or something like this, to make English, not an academic subject, but to make it an instrument, something that you actually use, I think that could help you a lot. And my third bit of advice is forget about IELTS. Forget about IELTS for now. Focus focus on improving your general English. So of course, in order to get a good mark at IELTS, like if you want to get a score of 7.0, you really have to be either a very strong upper intermediate user of English or an advanced user of English, and then on top of that to have the exam technique. But if you're a B1 user of English, it doesn't matter how many IELTS techniques you look at. It doesn't matter if your teacher tells you, oh, you should extend your answers, or you should use a range of discourse markers, or you should try to use a variety of structures. None of this advice will help you if your language is B1. You cannot learn IELTS techniques and go from a B1 to a C1. It doesn't work like that. IELTS is an English test, and ultimately, people with stronger English get stronger marks. And so my advice would be forget about IELTS for now. Focus. I know you have a tutor. Focus with your tutor. Find a learning strategy that works for you, that will help you to get from B1 to B2 in 9 months. I think in 9 months you can go from your current level to quite a good B2. And then when you get to B2, you might look then at some exam techniques, and that might get you, to the 6.5. I don't think you'll get 7 in a year, but that's just my opinion. Um, yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of this candidate speaking. Again, I want to stress that anytime I give somebody a low mark, it doesn't mean that I think they're a bad person, or it doesn't mean that I think their English is terrible or something like that. I've mentioned a few times, I'm a speaker of many languages, right? English and Welsh, those are both first languages for me. I have quite a high level in Russian, but my level of French is very low. Je parle en français un petit peu, just a little bit, and I speak Chinese a little bit. 我会说汉语，但是我说汉语的时候，我觉得我是一个 笨蛋. So I can speak like a little bit, but I know like Nura's level of English is so much higher than my level of Chinese, right? My level of Russian is higher than her English, but her level of English is so much higher than my Chinese. So this isn't for me to say, ah ha 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 ha, you made mistakes, this is terrible. No, 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 no. I am on many journeys in my language learning. Some of them I'm higher, some of them I'm lower. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being an elementary or a pre-intermediate or an intermediate. But for me, candidate's level is B1. Right. If you would like your own free practice speaking test with feedback, or if you would like me to check your IELTS writing, you can request this in my Telegram channel no good with prepositions. A link to this Telegram channel is given in the description below. But for now, I'll leave it there. Have a wonderful evening and see you all again very soon. Bye bye.